fiction or we talking about fact?
Fact. 225 million children are sexually abused each year. The majority of victims are under 8 years of age. About 50% of offenders are the parents.
What we talking about fiction or we talking about fact? We talking about fiction, hold up, pardon my back.
Fact. 1 out of every 3 girls will be sexually assaulted by the age of 18. 1 out of 7 children are abused. How many children do you know that have been sexually abused? And how many children do you know that have been sexually abused by their parent? You can't afford to ignore it.
Every 6 minutes in the United States, a child is sexually abused. 90% of the time, the child is sexually abused by someone he or she knows, loves, or trusts. 1 of every 4 girls and 1 of every 6 boys is sexually abused before their 18th birthday. But there is hope and there is help. Unique Visions and the Bivona Child Advocacy Center are here to help victims and their families heal. And we're happy to have with us today Lakeisha Smith,
Hello.
the founder of Unique Visions and the producer of a documentary on child molestation. And we're happy to have Mary Whittier,
Hi.
the executive director of Bivona Child Advocacy Center. Welcome to Crossroads.
Thanks.
Now, we did open the show with an excerpt from your documentary. And so as a survivor of sexual abuse, what is your mission? Why did you decide to produce a documentary about your own personal story of abuse?
Well, when I was going through the abuse and going through the pain, I decided I wanted to do something to give back to other people and to help myself actually through the pain as well. So I figured what better way to do it than to actually do a documentary, and it wasn't necessarily the first thought to do it on myself until I came to a class here, and Carvin actually encouraged me to do it on myself, and just went from there. So.
And what is the mission of Bivona Child Advocacy Center?
Bivona Child Advocacy Center is a nonprofit organization that provides comprehensive services to kids that have been sexually and physically abused. And we do that in a very warm and welcoming, child-friendly environment where all of the professionals that need to do the investigation, evaluation, and treatment of children who've been abused all are housed together. So children come to Bivona to get all of those services in one very child-friendly place so that they're not having to repeat their story of victimization over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, what is sexual abuse? Just to educate our audience, what is sexual abuse?
Well, the legal definition in New York State is any child under the age of 18 where a sexual assault or crime occurs. So it can be fondling, it can be penetration, intercourse, it can be taking nude photographs, it includes child pornography, it can include exposing oneself to a child for sexual gratification. Anything that an adult does to get sexual gratification off of it from a child and includes any one of those things that I described. But I think sometimes people automatically think it's got to be rape, and that's not always what it is. It can be kissing and fondling for the purposes of sexual gratification for that adult.
Okay. And it makes the child very uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
The
and
emotion or movement is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you did mention in your documentary that most of the victims are under the age of 8. And I was wondering, when or how did you come to understand that what was happening was abuse? Because that's very young, under the age of 8.
I don't remember the exact age that it happened, as I stated in my documentary, but I always have the flashbacks and the memories, and when I was having them, I could always see the perpetrator, which was my dad, you know, doing what he wanted to do with me. So I don't really remember the age, but I remember because you always get these vivid flashbacks of that exact thing that happened. So, yeah.
Now, that's the other thing that kind of hit me. I was astounded to hear the statistic about 1 of every 4 girls and 1 of every 4 boys. But then it hit me, well, then there has to be some comparable perpetrators. We're saying that many adults. Who is doing the abusing?
Well, it's actually 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys, by the time they have their 18th birthday, will have suffered some form of sexual abuse. So that's anything from being photographed nude and put on the internet to full-blown rape and everything in between. So the people that do this to children, you had said this earlier, Judy, when you opened up the piece, 90% of children that are sexually abused are sexually abused by someone that they know, someone that they love, and someone that they trust. So Lakeisha's father, that's a very, very common situation. It is not the boogeyman jumping out of the bushes exposing themselves. Does that happen? Do some kids get, raped on the streets of any city in America? Yes. But the majority of child sexual abuse is within the family or someone that child knows. A teacher, a family member, an older cousin, somebody in the clergy, somebody in their neighborhood, a babysitter. It's not it's not the strangers.
Wow. Now, if someone is an onlooker, are there any red flags that they might notice that they could tell that maybe a child is in trouble?
Well, that's a good question, and I think Lakeisha can maybe talk a little bit about her situation. And
what I would say would be like isolation from family members and friends, because I went through that a lot. Just being angry, depressed. Those are some things that people should try to take notice to in a child that they're familiar with. If they're not playing or if they're troubled by something, just pay attention that they're not doing their normal activities. I think that's a big sign. Yeah.
So and I think what Lakeisha is describing too is change in a child's normal and routine behavior. A kid that always loved going to school and always loved going to Grandpa's house, and all of a sudden is no way do they want to go to Grandpa's, if they don't want to go to school, or they were really good a good student doing well academically and their grades are going down. They would always be the kid out in the neighborhood playing, and now all they want to do is be in their room taking a nap. A 7-year-old who now reverts to bedwetting. A child that's getting all these gifts or is being sort of lavished with a lot of things from someone that pays a little bit too much attention to them. On the converse, some children have overly sexualized behavior where you wouldn't think a 6-year-old should know some of these acts or some of the language or some of the behaviors that they do that are over-sexualized. It can be a lot of those things. Now, that doesn't mean automatically, but it's something that should put a red flag up. No. Absolutely.
Now, sometimes, I hear see stories on TV, on the TV movies, that the spouse didn't know. The person that was there didn't know. Is it easy to miss the flags, or?
I don't think it's easy to miss if you're paying attention to your children often. So I think parents, if they pay attention to what's going on with their children as much as possible and talk to them, communication is big with children and parents. So if they don't have that, then probably, yes, they would miss it. Oh. So that's my...
Yeah, and I think, too, that oftentimes there are, if we take a situation with a mom and a dad, and the dad is doing the abusing, many times we've found the mom suspects something, but is either denying it, living kind of in denial, oh no, that couldn't happen. A child sometimes will disclose and they'll get brushed off. So a lot of times it's not wanting to believe that this could possibly happen. There's no way my husband or my boyfriend or the person that I care about is going to molest my child. No way that's going to happen. When in reality, that's most of the times what it is. Right.
Oh. Now, I can't even imagine what's going through the mind of the child, but what are some wrong beliefs the child might be having about what's going on?
Well, I think one of the beliefs would be that it's their fault. A lot of children feel that way, so that's why some of them don't come forward. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones, that it's their fault and they're afraid that no one will believe them. Those are two big keys that, they will shy away from telling anyone.
Okay. And what Lakeisha is speaking to, there has been a tremendous amount of research done less than 1 in 10 children ever disclose that they've been sexually abused. So there's a whole stigma out there about this issue that we at Bivona want to help dispel. So just like, you know, in the 60s and 70s, we didn't want to talk about cancer. In the 80s and 90s, we didn't want to talk about AIDS. We have got to get to a point where we talk about this subject very openly, so that, and that family members are willing to talk to their children. You know, there's ways to talk to kids, but that we don't do this or bury our heads in the sand or completely think that that could never happen in my neighborhood, or that only happens to those people, or it only happens in this segment of the community. Child sexual abuse happens everywhere.
Well, thank you very much for the information you've shared so far. We look forward to coming back to you in a moment.
Thank you.
This concludes this segment of the show. During the next segment, we will talk about the specific services available through Unique Visions and through Bivona Child Advocacy Center. We'll be back in a moment.